Hi everyone, this is Patricia. Hoping you guys are having a good day. By the time that you're listening to this recording, I am starting off my hiatus. I am on vacation with my family and I'm going to be gone for quite a bit. But that doesn't mean I'm going to leave you off high and dry. Aaron and I had just recorded a few episodes of In Search of the Crystal Skull, where we are starting off our new themed month, which is Fantasy Month. And we had just posted up our very first episode of Fantasy Month, which is the 1977 animated adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, animated by Rankin Bass and Topcraft. And then next week, we will be talking about the 1982 Rankin Bass / Topcraft / IFC film, The Last Unicorn. I'll be posting up some additional content when I return, and then around June, I have a very special announcement of what's going to be the next bit of content that's going to be covered, as well as what I'm going to be doing throughout the summer. But in the meanwhile, what you're about to listen to are the episode discussions of Season 3B of the 2019 Disney Channel animated series Amphibia, which we discussed about on Aaron and Patricia. So for those who don't know, Aaron and Patricia is a weekly podcast series where we talk about various pop culture news, and we've been watching Season 3 of Amphibia. But that's not the only show we talk about. We've also been covering the Disney Channel animated series The Owl House, as well as the Disney Channel / Pixar animated series Monsters at Work. So I just want to let you guys know that there are major spoilers ahead. If you have not seen Amphibia, then go over to Disney Plus and check it out. But if you have caught up, then sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Anyway, I think we've given people enough time to disappear from to not be spoiled about Amphibia in the Owl House. So, shall we go into it?
All right, so which one shall we talk about first, the Owl House or Amphibia?
Well, given the fact that Amphibia is our debuting spoiler section, I think maybe we should definitely focus on that first. I think. And for those of you who do not know, we have actually caught up with every single episode of Amphibia on Season 3. And so, starting off with Season 3B, the first episode, which was Escape to Amphibia, which is actually a half-hour special. So, the idea being is that the Planters and Ambunchoi have now got a portal going with the help of their friends. But unfortunately, the portal is not big enough for them to fit through, so they have to get some more power, and they have to get some other stuff. So this involves a hilarious trip to Spenco. Definitely no relation to Costco.
Nope.
They do. By the way, this segment they do a lot of callbacks to things that have happened in the show. So having to repair Frobo and make him into a race car, and then they do the thing that really gave all the fans PTSD, and that was the reenactment of the stabbing of Marcy in the back by Mrs. Boonchoy. And with Anne. And by the way, before we actually get further into this, I mean, obviously we started off with Season 3, and we haven't actually had a chance to comment on some of the things that we did like about Season 3, and that is that the one thing I actually really do like about this is that Matt Briley's mom playing Mrs. Boonchoy in all of this. She is probably one of my favorite voice actresses now, because she sounds so sentimental and she sounds so real. You hang on on every word when she's talking. She talks with this wonderful sweetness, and even when she gets upset with Anne or gets upset with somebody else, you still feel like there's this mother character that's in front of you. You do feel really bad for her that she's had to put up with she's had to basically put up with Anne being missing for 5 months, pretty much.
Yeah, and the fact that she had to actually build a shrine dedicated to Anne and counting the days of when she was missing.
No, well, it was her workout room, quote unquote.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
And some of the things about Anne Boonchoy, the fact that she told the story of how her community came around her when Anne went missing, and everyone rallied around her and helped her out with the restaurant and shopping, and I could probably imagine she was just kind of just there in the house, just kind of sat there not able to do anything, and wondering where on earth her daughter has gone. And
Yeah, and if you remember from like the first episode, Anne went missing on her birthday.
exactly, and so that must have been devastating for her. Like and that's one of the things I really like. They build these situations like when kids go missing, like you just you feel so bad for Mrs. Boonchoy. Not to say you don't feel bad for Mr. Boonchoy as well. By the way, you feel pretty bad for Mr. Boonchoy quite a lot of the time because he's pretty much the butt of every joke, pretty much of like everything that's going on. From his gaming computer dying to him getting hit in the head with things and things like that. So like. He has some sentimental, as a character as well. But Mrs. Boonchoy, I just feel for this character. Like it's not just like the way she is as a personality, but just her voice. She really is one of my favorite Disney characters. I think at this point, I think, and that's saying a lot, by the way. And you hear her stories with saying, I didn't know if we were going to be accepted into this community, but now when she's riding on the floats in the Christmas episode, and you feel like all the emotion of like her, having to pick back up and having to start all over again in a new place, in the new world, if you will. Like you really, I really hope that somewhere down the line we are going to see more of her at some point, and hear maybe more about like her backstory and everything. And
I agree.
Yeah. So
let's go over the episode recap. So, the first one that aired was as of last week. Escape to Amphibia, episode 10, and the plot synopsis is this. With one shot at getting the planters back to Amphibia, Anne and her parents must go up against Mr. X and the FBI.
Yeah. So, going back from what I was saying, they build this portal, they go to Spenco, and they have these, segments there, but then Mr. X catches up with them and, succeeds, catches the planters and, locks them up in pretty much in a fortress, and then just leaves the Boonchoys pretty much to on their own. It says they can't really do anything. So
yeah. And of course, when we saw on what they were trying to do to get the plans going to, bring up the portal so that they can be able to get enough juice for it. And then, unfortunately, the only way that they can be able to do so is when all of a sudden the FBI shows up and they're captured, and then they're thrown over to, they capture the planters and they're, being experimented ET style. And so that's when Anne and her parents and her companions, such as Terry and Dr. Jan and the robot girls, decided, okay, we're going to go off and we're going to save them, and we're going to try to see if we can get the portal open so we can send you back to Amphibia.
Mm-hmm. Interesting thing I would like, at the very ending of all of this, like, Mr. X is still trying to, like, stop everybody, but then when he sees Anne basically power up and then sees everything that happens, and then, at the very end, he's like, oh, hey, you've all got a lot of explaining to do. But then they turn it around and say, oh, no, we're going to tell you basically what's really going on. And so Mr. X looks like he's, a bit overwhelmed with what he's about to be told. So I don't know, like, are we potentially looking at a redemption arc for Mr. X, maybe? Oh.
I mean, if that were to happen, it'll have to happen like much later on in the series, because now Anne and the planters are back in Amphibia again.
But yeah, just because they're back doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to keep in mind, like, we were focused on Anne and the planters, throughout the show, but we still like cut back to like segments of like when we're on the Earth, and then we also cut back to Sasha and we cut back to Marcy. So it's like
we did cut into Sasha and Captain Grimes, and then we also cut into Olivia and Yunnan when they were trying to find where Marcy was.
Yeah, so I think going forward, I think we will go back to Earth from time to time. I think, and I think we'll be seeing. Saying maybe they're going to tell Mr. X everything that they know, and then Mr. X is going to be like, "Oh, Greece, we got to do something." Like, it's if this crazy king is trying to take over all worlds, like, that includes us as well. So I think, heck, maybe he like, turns around to his boss, and his boss doesn't believe him, and Mr. X goes rogue. Like, that'd be kind of cool. Like, that
would be kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, that'd be kind of nice thing for RuPaul to kind of do. Like, he gets to be the hero now. Yeah, I think that'd be kind of cool to do. So, mind you, like, here's the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit. Like, they're going to a world to take on like an army of like machines, and you think that the two people you think they would bring with them would be Ali and Jess, wouldn't you? Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but here's the thing. I don't think that they expected this to happen, that King Andreas was going to take over everything. They just thought, okay, King Andreas just sent a few robots and, it's nothing that we couldn't handle. But then when they got back to Amphibia, then they realized what kind of trouble that they were at.
Mm-hmm. And that leads us into our next episode, which is the one we saw this week. And the first one involves Commander Anne, which Sasha is now believes that she should no longer be taking control and hands control of pretty much of the resistance to Anne. And
Yes.
Gives her like the sacred helmet to take control of it. So Anne does a terrible job because she is basically basing all her experience on the fact that when Warwood hasn't gone to hell, and everything is completely changed, and they could just do the mere basics of fighting things off. And it all goes pretty poorly, and Anne is begging Sasha to take command again, but she doesn't want to because she feels like that's all she's done, and she's become a terrible person because of it. But Anne sentimentally says, no, you really are. You've been here for months, and I've not been here, and I don't know what's happened, and you have a better setup about this than I do. So you should be the one that's in charge. So Commander Grime is not too wasn't too happy that he was demoted a second time. So.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And I think that also just seeing the progression of where Sasha was, where she was clearly like the bad guy throughout the first 2 seasons, where she was manipulated to say, okay, we're going to take over everything. We're going to have the Toads rule. And then when the Newts are ruling and seeing about what kind of destruction that they're doing, it's like, yeah, we can't do this anymore. And also the fact that, because of my actions, I was able to pretty much separate my friends. Anne is no longer there at the time, and Marcy has been betrayed by King Andreas, and who knows where she's at. So
it makes you wonder, like, I don't think she was necessarily like the villain, in regards. I think in regards to, she just wanted to get back home, and she was willing to do it at any cost. And I think she kind of like was coming from a position of ignorance, really, rather than like like she's inherently evil. I don't think that's where she was coming from. And also, like, the one thing I think I would say is that in defense of Sasha, I don't think her backstory is all that fully explained. I think there's gaps in there, like like if you remember, like I'm not saying that this is one of the reasons why she's evil. There's plenty of reasons. I think it's more to do with the situation more than the actual, like, when I say this is that notice in the Christmas episode when Anne was like writing to Marcy and Sasha's parents. And in regards to Marcy, she wrote to the Wu family, but in regards to Sasha, she wrote separate letters for both Mr. and Mrs. Waybright. So it looks like they're either going through like some kind of separation, or they're going through some kind of divorce. I don't know, or maybe they are separated already. I don't know, but not saying that's the excuse for the reason why Sasha acted out the way that she did. But if it means that there was a debacle going on within the family, and this set Sasha off on some kind of track where she felt like she was out of control of the situation, she wanted to take more control, and so she asserted herself a lot more. Maybe that might be an explanation behind it, but we never got that, as far as I'm aware.
Sure, we never did get that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think, but at the end of the day, I think Sasha needed more back explanation. I think for the reason why she was acting the way that she was. I think.
Yeah, I'm sure that we'll get that later on in the season, but I think that this is a great first step towards her getting redeemed, and I can't wait to see what happens later on in the series.
I think she's been redeemed already, pretty much. Like, she's part of the Resistance now. And
that is true, yeah.
Everyone's accepted
I just would love to see more context to it, for sure.
Well, I think that's the one thing I would say about the series in general, is that Sasha is not really fully explained, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, then. So let's move on to the other episode that was paired up with it, which is Sprivy. Sprig and Ivy devise a scheme to be together, even at the cost of failing the mission.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a fan response, really, because, we're going to be talking about the Owl House a bit soon, but I think there's this expectation that because Luz and Amity are all together and everything like that, they'll fight together, and that, and I think that's going to be like every ship now, like, oh, hey, it's the couple that are taking on the world, and they can do, as long as they're together, like nothing can go wrong or anything like that. And I think this episode, is probably a really good episode. I think this episode needed to happen because I think they need to kind of lower fan expectations of like, oh, just because they're together as a couple means they have to do everything together. Like there are going to be times where Sprig and Ivy are going to need to be on their separate other missions. So for example, in this situation there was they needed Ivy, and they needed I can't remember the name of the other one. Sorry, they needed Ivy, and they needed like the hairdresser frog to actually go up and climb up and be able to dismantle the robot that was guarding like the tower. And before the other robots came back, and then they needed Sprig to help get all the automatic protection away from the tower, and then be able to clear the way for his partner to go over and actually destroy the actual to destroy the tower and do all of that. But they showed in this example of what would happen if Sprig and Ivy did their own thing and left the other characters to their own devices, and you can see that they couldn't cope with the mission, and that so Sprivy ended up being more of a problem to the solution more than actually solving the problem itself. So this was a good episode to actually show, because it actually puts down some realistic expectations of like, just because they're together doesn't necessarily mean they have to be together all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's going to happen in like all the other, probably happen in the Owl House as well. Like maybe there might be a situation where Luz has to go off and do something, and Lamity has to go off and do something else. We'll have like the loving embrace of like well, be careful out there, sweetheart, and the sweet potato, and then they'll go off and fight whatever needs to fight. So I think
exactly.
Sprivy is an important episode. It has a purpose, which I'm very happy about.
Yes, it does, for sure.
Let's talk about Amphibia. This episode was split into two, as normally Amphibia is, and so Sasha's Angels was the first Amphibia episode that we checked out. So Sasha and Anne Boon Choi take on some marauders who have basically stolen all their stuff. So it doesn't go all to plan, and so Sasha and Anne have to abandon the plan, and all the rest of the frogs get captured. So have to forgive me. Again, I'm really bad with character names. So it's the frogs. It's the frogmare's assistant who gets captured, and also along with all the other
his
ones.
His name is Toady.
Toady, yeah. So Miss Croker, Wally, Maddie, Loggle, and Toady all get captured. And so they're basically left to their own devices. Then Miss Croker basically gets walloped at one point, and so then they're basically on their own. And then Toady is then basically goes through like a character arc as basically turning into a rebel, and then ends up creating this scheme to basically get them all out. Pretty much. And so so I mean, we're gonna get some development with like all our characters in this, and so also we get some back and forth between Anne Boon Choi and Sasha, and so that while they're having like this part of this training, and Anne's worried about like leaving them there, and not wanting to leave them there any longer, and Sasha says, look, just trust them, they'll be able to get themselves out of the situation, and Sasha ended up being right. So which and also there's a lesson for Anne as well, because they've been through a lot, whilst they've been gone, and she should be able to trust all the people around her a bit more. So.
Yeah, that was actually pretty awesome, considering that Anne was like really afraid of them being captured, and Sasha was like, no, you have to trust them, and immediately with like Anne's instincts, it's like we need to be able to rescue them because we don't know what they're going through, and it's true. I mean, when the last time that Anne saw them, I mean, they were just like like Mrs. Croker was like this frail old lady, and Toady was like, he was just like the assistant to the mayor, and Wally was just like the singing, overly optimistic one. And so I don't blame Anne for kind of being afraid. I mean, even though that she just recently came back to Amphibia and she's been seeing that King Andreas has been taking over everything, but Sasha has been with them for months, and had been training with them during the resistance, and she knows what they're capable of. And so this is the opportunity for Sasha to kind of like patch things up with Anne and building trust, and also to teaching her how to sword fight, which is a great opportunity for Anne to increase on her skills.
Yeah. So, in regards to like, I mean, so this episode, I mean, some people say it's like, just it's a filler episode. I don't think it is. Like, I like the idea that they've introduced like the fact that not only is there like, there's the Andrea side, and then there's like there's the resistance. There's people actually in the middle who are effectively like they're stranded. Like, they don't really care about the resistance or care about like, Andreas or anything like that. They just care about surviving on their own. Like, and...
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we even have with Toady, who, was pushed out of his comfort zone, saying, oh, I want to be the lookout, and I want to take notes with the Post-it notes and the pencils. And then Mrs. Croker was like, you're more than capable of doing this. And, when Mrs. Croker was knocked out cold, unconscious, and nobody knew what to do, it was up to Toady to decide about how they were going to not only escape from their prison, but also how they were able to take down the Marauders and they can be able to get their supplies back.
Mm-hmm. So, there was that episode, and then we end up with the next episode, which is Old Town Road, and this episode is actually developing the story now, because they actually now they have to go find Mother Olm. And so we end up going back to where we ended up with when they were doing the trials of not getting along with as siblings, and so they ended up going back to that place again. And
and as you remember from the episode Fight at the Museum, where we were first introduced to Dr. Jan, is that there was a prophecy written in the back where it was talking about seek the mother of Olms, she will guide you to your destiny, which is why that they had decided that seeing her was going to be their next step to finding out what they need to do in order for them to win against King Andreas. And then Captain Grime was saying about like nobody has seen them for decades, and then Sprig and Polly were like, no, we've seen them once. We were at the Quarrels Pass when we were fighting each other, and we met up with these blind twin Olms, and we know where they are. We can take you to them. And so Anne, Sasha, Hop Pop, Sprig, and Polly were able to go over there, and then they went over to the town of Proteus, which, by the way, the design of it is beautiful. Like, wow, it was like one of the most.
Matt Briley, by the way, has put up some screenshots of.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some screenshots. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna put some screenshots of Proteus, and it is a breathtaking scene. It's just wow. Anyway, so they go over to Proteus and they try to convince them, hey, there's these earthquakes that are happening, but no, it's just a drill from King Andreas because they're trying to find resources and iron ore, and they're trying to take down Proteus. They want to destroy you. And they're like, nah, this isn't happening. It's just earthquakes. It happens.
Well, if you remember I can't remember I'm really sorry, everybody. I'm just really bad with character names today. So there was not Mother Olm, the one that was in charge. What do they call the person who was in charge of the city?
You're not referring to Mother Olm. You're referring to Parisia.
Parisia, yeah. So the Parisia basically leads on to everybody, like, oh, this is all just a bunch of hooey, like, it could just be natural earthquakes, and everyone just kind of follows along with that, like, it's just so it's like it's kind of like Parisia, kind of like turning around to everybody and like saying what they want, saying what they need to think.
Yeah, so. And if you remember in Quarrels Pass, where Lissel and Angwin were living at the caves in the bottom of Quarrels Pass, the reason why was because they originally were from Proteus, but they did something a long time ago that made them banished from the city. And so when they were trying to enter in, they were just seen as like traitors. You shouldn't be allowed into the city. We don't give second chances. And then Parisia is like saying, these mysterious earthquakes and then the sunlight. It's like, oh, this stuff will pass eventually. So it doesn't really help much that when they're trying to convince, Parisia and all the other Olms that King Andres is trying to destroy them. I mean, even Sasha herself says, "You're the biggest moron I've ever met."
Yeah, exactly, and that's the one thing that sets Sasha off, because the fact that they just don't give second chances, and the fact that yeah, they've made mistakes, but it doesn't mean that they can't learn from their mistakes. And
Exactly, and we know this from Sasha in the first 2 seasons, where she was just convinced that taking over Amphibia with the toads, it was the right thing to do, and then she realizes, oh wait, I was in the wrong, so I, didn't even deserve a second chance. We knew this
but
from.
not only that, she learned that herself. Like she's actually preaching that out to other people. So that's the reason why she stood up to Patricia, because not only does she believe that for herself, but she believes everyone else should take that example too. So she's not afraid to tell every other people the lessons that she's learned, which I think is really important, because as a part of her character development. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, and Patricia actually appreciates that. She says, "No one's ever stood up to me like that in 500 years." Like, maybe it's time that someone did. So so she does know something about the mother of Olms, and so they end up opening a cave, and that's where the episode ends off on a cliffhanger. And that is where we lead into our next 2 episodes of Amphibia. So, Patricia, do you want to tell us about Mother Olm, and also lead into Grime's Pupil?
All right, then. So, in this episode, we finally get to see Mother Olm. After all the buildup that we had from last week, we finally get to see her. And yes, Mother Olm is played by Whoopi Goldberg, very similar to Gaia from Captain Planet.
That's what I was going to say, actually. That we thought that she was going to play Mother Olm in the same way that she played Gaia from Captain Planet, but no, actually, it's a different performance, if you notice.
Yeah, she sounds older, which makes a lot of sense because, Mother Olm is like thousands of years old, so it does make a lot of sense. So yeah, basically we have the gang just basically talk to Mother Olm, saying, "What is the prophecy that we saw in the pot?" And then she's like, "I don't remember." And then they were trying to like jog her memory, but she still doesn't remember. And the only way they can be able to do it is to rub brain cream on her so that she can be able to remember. So we have Anne, Sasha, Polly, and Sprig going in from Mother Olm's ear into her brain, while Hop Pop, because he's old and his joints are not functioning very well, he has to stay behind and he feels useless. And so Mother Olm is giving him like this encouragement about being old is fantastic because we have all this wisdom and all that kind of stuff. And so then as time goes on, we do get to see, them, crawling into the brain, and Sasha is so miserable because she has a fear of ears.
And by the way, also, I once seen one thing I mentioned to Patricia when we were talking about this, like it did remind me of something out of Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. It's actually, I think this is a reference to inside Jabu Jabu's belly, one of the dungeons in the 3rd dungeon in Legend of Zelda.
I mean, it could be. I mean, you know how these newer creators are into their like video game references.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, we have them finally going into the brain, and then we find out why that Mother Olm is going through all of these migraines and why she's not remembering anything. So there's bat mosquitoes inside her brain, and they're absorbing the memories of Mother Olm, and that's why she's been getting all these migraines, and that's why she's been forgetting. And so they have to, remove the bat mosquitoes from her brain, and so then they do that, but at the same time, now they're trapped inside of her nose. And then finally, Hop Pop decides that he knows how to make Mother Olm sneeze by gathering all of these plants and these herbs and these vegetables and making a very powerful allergy potion. And so that's how, they were able to escape from the nose. And when we saw it, it was like really gross and slimy. And then, of course, Aaron had to make a stupid joke about Nickelodeon when he saw them sneezing out.
How could I not?
It was clever, and I hate you for it.
Okay, so
anyway, and then when they finally were able to be released from the brain and the nose, and unfortunately she still doesn't remember because the brain cream just so happened to have expired over 70 years ago. And then finally she was like, "Oh, wait a minute, I actually wrote the prophecy from up on the wall." And then Sasha was like, "What? We had to go through all that for nothing?" And then she was screaming out, "Worst mission ever!" And so then it was, then the prophecy was saying about like how 3 stars will burn brightly and will be able to show the direction of Amphibia, and will be able to take down the corruption and the evil. And it showcases that the 3 stars are Sasha, Marcy, and Anne. And the only way that they can be able to do that is to get their powers back from the Calamity Box. And we know that Anne has powers of it, but if you remember that the powers of Sasha and Marcy are trapped in the box again. So now they have to find a way so that they can be able to retrieve it again. And here's something that I actually, liked on Twitter because this was something that Matt Braley himself mentioned. So there was a person who made this really interesting theory. Zachary Bartolo said, "Now I understand the frog monster in the mural. It's not the core or some monster that the girls have to fight. It's a symbolic representation of Amphibia's greed and corruption. The girls are fighting for Amphibia's soul." And then Matt said, "I don't normally comment on stuff like this because I believe it's good to keep things vague/open. But there's nothing that warms this creator's heart more than what this clever fan had hit the nail right on the head."
Wow. So
Yeah.
even I was like,
Wow.
oh wow, this is not the core or some monster that the girls are going to have to fight. Even
Yeah, so
yeah.
that monster that we saw that was controlling Marcy this entire time, that's not the main bad guy. King Andreas is not the main bad guy either. It's the greed and corruption of Amphibia itself.
It's going to be interesting to see where we go with this then. Because if the goal is not to defeat the core and the goal is not to defeat Andreas, if that's not what we're looking at here, what is it that they're going to end up achieving out of doing either a massive war or what are they going to achieve by doing what they're going to do? So it's going to be interesting to see where it all kind of goes, really. Because this ends up kind of asking more questions about where we're going to end up in the end. Because at least you could say, here's Avatar, for example. The big, thing at the end is going to be defeating Fire Lord Ozai. And
we knew that from the beginning.
We knew that from the beginning, yeah. But the one thing the only conflict that we had is that Aang was not willing to kill Ozai in order to basically bring peace amongst the worlds. And so now this throws in, I guess they're going to have to fight against the core and they're going to have to fight against Andreas, but, I'm guessing there's going to be something different that's going to happen at the end now? Where are they going to go with this? It throws up a lot of intrigue.
Here's the thing about this whole corruption thing, and we'll talk about this in the next episode, but that, for all these years of Amphibia, the toads, the frogs, and the newts were separate. And they felt that, we could never be together because, the toads were like this, war-driven, section. And the newts were like very sophisticated and smart and classy. And the frogs were like very humble and lived in the countryside. So they were very separate. So the fact that we have to bring them together is what's a massive thing that a lot of people were like very hesitant towards. It's like, we're different from them. But at the same time, if you have a goal that you need to meet up with, then you need to be able to put aside your differences and be able to see that you need to work together in order for peace to happen. I mean, we saw this, correlating in the next episode, and we're going to get to that in just a moment, but there's a bit of corruption regarding about that there's a separation and people think that there's one that is higher or lower than the other. And then regarding about the greed, regarding about with King Andreas, who wanted power. He wanted power to rule over everything. But then we realized that he's a pawn in all of this because of this core that's going on. So there has to be more to this whole story that we're not getting yet. And I'm sure we'll get that in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the next episode, which is Grime's Pupil, and exactly, this actually cleverly this whole message carries on to this episode, because now Sprig and Grime have to, coexist with one another, because they are trying to get the Toads, what remains of the Toads, into the Resistance, but they've made a deal with Grime's sister to basically say, there's going to be a cage fight, and I will take on Sprig, and if I win, you have to do what we have to say, and if we win, we will pledge our allegiance to you, to the Resistance. Right. So that ends up creating a problem between Sprig and Grime, because Grime now has to train Sprig in how to defeat his sister. But Sprig is too narrow-minded to think, I've beaten Grime before, so therefore I can beat this person again. It's like, well, no, when you beat me, it was because it was amongst all the chaos that was going on in the Newtopia. You need to deal with, my sister within a cage, where there's going to be a lot more things to worry about. And also that she's not going to be distracted by anything. So That creates some, butting of heads between our two characters here. But eventually they learn that, oh, hey, well, maybe there is a possibility for Sprig to, have some toughness in him. And also there's a possibility for Grime to train him for his, more his dynamic approach to fighting rather than just brute force. So, and they learn that after basically they get attacked by, what are they called, hyena bees? Or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like great. These creatures that they come up with, I swear. But hey, they do the job, so I guess we can't complain too much about them. So yeah.
I guess that's true. I mean, they're very similar to Avatar, in which they have these amalgamations of different creatures together.
Mm-hmm. So they basically fight off these hyena bees things, and then they learn that, oh, hey, we can definitely do this. And so it comes to the cage fight, and Sprig basically wins the fight, and the Toads all pledge their allegiance to the Resistance.
Yeah. And Beatrix was actually really surprised by this because she thought, frogs are inferior. They're not as strong as we are. We were trained at an early age to fight. So, yeah, she was underestimating Sprig from the beginning. But Sprig was able to learn from not only his techniques, but also with Grime's as well. And so that's how he was able to win. And that just goes to show you that, even though that Sprig was really hesitant on being trained with Grime, which makes a lot of sense because, Grime almost killed Hop Pop. And, Grime was even saying, there was, he was, we needed to do it because, he was, a political, person that we needed to take down. And so then we have with Sprig saying, I'm going to learn from you, but, your ways of learning is really complicated for me. But I have to remember that I need to learn these things because how am I going to be able to take down your sister? So he, in a combination of his speed and accuracy mixed with Grime's strength and rage was the reason why he was able to win. And so that was when Beatrix decided, okay, we're going to join up with you. So let us know when the war happens and we'll be there. So yeah, I'm thinking that with all the stuff that's going to be happening, I mean, oh boy, we're in for a rough ride considering of next week's episode where we have the root of evil and the core and the king. So now we're going to get some more information regarding about the stuff we saw in this episode.
And by the way, the last last episode names have actually been released from what I understand.
Oh,
so
nice.
The last episode is going to be called All In.
Oh, that would be really, really big.
I've been talking about a potential thing that, because Andrea says he wants to rule all worlds, and maybe he may end up accidentally opening up all worlds. And also, if you remember that, that scientist was talking about the possibility of the multiverse as well, and open up the idea of visiting other worlds as well. It might not just be all the Amphibia characters getting together to potentially defeat Andreas. And also keep in mind, we also had the Owl House Amphibia crossover as well.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, can you see what I'm hinting at here? Are we
you don't think?
Are we basically going to get an Avengers style, ending to Amphibia? Basically, that would be kind of cool if they decided to go in that direction. One portal opens up and here comes Luz, Ida, and King, and maybe a few other people from the Owl House, and then another portal opens up and it's Star versus the Forces of Evil. And another portal opens up and it's the Gummy Bears, and another portal opens up and it's the Gargoyles. Everyone just gets together and then just has this big massive fight. And you just see that'd be every fanfiction writer's dream come true, pretty much.
That would be awesome.
It gives intrigue to Amphibia, doesn't it?
That's a lot to take in.
Yeah, and we'll leave everybody on that really happy note, shall we say, or really interesting note.
Let's do that.
But we also got a really good Amphibia episode to talk about too. So, the first Amphibia part of this episode is basically Anne Boone Choi and all her frog friends basically fall into a cult. I think that is basically what happens. And so they are basically... So Hot Pop is feeling pretty down because he's trying to recruit people into the Resistance, but he's recruiting people into saying, oh, hey, we're good farmers. rather than kind of like, we're good fighters or anything like that. And he's a bit disappointed that basically doesn't win anybody around. But then they accidentally fall into this, into this like small little town that basically no one's ever seen before. And there's a reason why, because it's basically like controlled by like the spore that we met before, Jeremy.
Oh yeah, the Perry Gary. Yes, if
the
you remember
Gary,
from the episode "Children of the Spore," where Hop Pop felt that he wasn't getting control of Anne, Sprig, and Polly because they were disobeying him, then he found a spore that he can be able to control them, and so then he tried to destroy it, and then we find out that Jeremy actually drank from it, and that's how Gary was able to live, and that's when he was like wandering around, and he was in the desert, and he was almost eaten by buzzards, and going through the rain. But then he went over to this like nice little farm town called Gardenton, and he was able to build a friendship with the frogs, and they were able to become better gardeners without mind control. And then I was able to control them without even using my powers. And yeah, so basically it was essentially that, where we got to meet up with an old foe again.
Yeah. So, it's a pretty basic episode, really. Like, it's sort of kind of reminds me, like, the Movementarians, I think, episode, like, from The Simpsons. Like, things aren't all like the same.
It does make a lot of sense, because we are building up into the massive war, and we do know about the prophecy from the last episode. So they are trying to get more people so that they can be able to build up the resistance. So we saw this in the last episode where Beatrix and the Toads were a part of this, and now we have Alpha Perry Gary and his frogs being a part of this.
Yeah. And, I like the thing when they said, like, oh, hey, look, we've got a bigger enemy to deal with here. And it's kind of like, oh, yeah, well, I agree, because now that Andreas knows that we're here. So he's basically, said, okay, well, we'll join the resistance and let us know when you need us. And but funnily enough, like, Anne actually brings up that the mind control collars that they're using, they might be using some other fungus. So apparently there might be a second control fungus out there, controlling people. So so I think, mind you, I'm wondering though, like, I don't know if I overly trust that fungus, to be honest with you. Like, I kind of thinking that they're gonna probably team up with the other fungus and probably betray Anne and everybody else. I think they're gonna be like the Flood from Halo, personally, but that's just me.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyway, so that's that episode, and then we get the episode that everybody is talking about, which is The King and the Core. And so
this was a big episode.
Yeah, so we finally get the reveal of Darcy, as she's now known as, which I don't know, like it was kind of. So I mean, we've already got kind of like a reveal of like what Darcy looks like, but I don't know, like it just kind of like gets thrown in, like, oh hey, we've already met Darcy already. I don't know. I would have liked more of have more of a a theatrical reveal, I think, for this episode. But that's just me being picky. So
okay, fair enough.
It kind of makes me feel like we're going to throw into it.
And also, the name of Darcy, by the way, is not a fan name. This name was actually revealed in the credits. So yeah, this isn't like a Lucidity kind of situation. Okay,
it isn't. No. So apparently Darcy has she has got Marcy stored somewhere in her memory banks. She's actually not. She's actually picked up still some of her faults, if you will. So she's still falling over, still like quirky stuff and things like that. And I think she's probably still playing games, from what I can see. So she's still
she's still playing games. Her favorite food is like red velvet cupcakes with ube frosting. She's still being klutzy, and she's very hyperactive, which you wouldn't expect to see in like this diabolical demon that's been around for thousands of years. So yeah, we do get to see a lot of Marcy in this core.
Yeah. So Andreas comes across an old portrait that he'd ripped up back a while ago, and this is where we basically get into the flashback. So yeah, basically we get a second show with a flashback. So
how coincidental!
How coincidental, yeah. Like, mind you, like,
tie into what's going to be happening in the future.
Yeah, like, but here's the thing about this, like, it doesn't it feel kind of eerie? Like, the Owl House and Amphibia have like somewhat linear kind of like themes, building on this week, and like I said, like, we're building up to All In. Like, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
as the
So
fight.
we have the Owl House in which we get the introduction of Ida and Rain, but then it all ties up together to the Day of Unity. And in this episode, we have the introduction of King Andreas when he was younger and he was becoming king when his father decides to pass on to him in the rule, and we get to see the Calamity Box. We get to see who his friends were, and then it all leads up into conquering the earth so that they can be able to use its resources.
Imagine if the Day of Unity and King Andreas, like, they invade on the same day.
Holy shit,
And
that would be
they end
amazing.
they end up meeting with one another. It's like, wait a second, this is supposed to be our Day of Unity. No, this is supposed to be the day that I invade the Earth, and then the Emperor's Covenant and like King Andreas is like robots all start fighting each other
Yeah,
and
exactly.
stuff.
You have Emperor Bella saying, "I've been waiting 50 years for this," or
Well, I've been waiting
and then,
thousands of years. Mine's bigger
yeah,
than
get
yours.
live. Stay in your lane.
Oh, that'll be hilarious. Mind you,
That would be great.
mind you, imagine if what a day in infamy that would be for America. It's like, you know, like on the East Coast, you know, it's being invaded by witches, and like on the other side of the coast, it's invaded by like frogs and robots. Like, you know, like which emergency do you deal with first?
Okay, we have this call from the president saying, like, okay, we have witches who are, going into the East Coast. They're conquering Connecticut. There's this giant Titan's head in the background. Oh, but wait, we have another phone call saying, like, okay, we have a robotic frogs robot and toads and newts taking over California. And then, probably down in Texas, they're probably like, wow.
Yeah, and like,
here.
and when Joe Biden hears about it, he's like, well, let me just ask my imaginary friend I shook hands with just before. Like,
oh my god.
Right. Anyway, moving away from that. So Amphibia. In this episode, so we get a flashback, and this is back when Andreas was friends with a toad and a frog. So the frog is called Leaf, and you have to forgive me, I've forgotten the name of the toad. What's
Barrel?
Barrel. So they were basically very close friends, and this was at the time when Andreas basically was ascending to the throne. And
Yes.
His father is really, really untrustworthy of other people, including like having friends near him. And he's even like saying to Andreas, "Look, you know, don't have friends around you because basically they're going to manipulate you." And Andreas going like, "No, like, you know, they're just going to help me and stuff like that." So his father gives him the key to the to the music box that they have, and basically that he says he's going to put you in charge of like invading another planet, and basically, so it looks like the newts have basically been invading worlds pretty much for like, you know, a long time. So like this is something that isn't new to them. So
they've been like multiple worlds in multiple universes. They've been doing this for who knows how long, and that the reason why is because it's the controlling of the core. And we saw this with King Andreas's dad's crown, that this has been happening, that the core really wants to control all of these worlds from all of these different universes. And the reason why is because they can be able to continue getting resources so that their land lives in peace.
Yeah, you know something, you know, like, I'm sorry to keep like crossing between the Owl House and Amphibia, but you know, they say that they've been invading worlds and putting like, you know, and be conquering stuff. Like, imagine if it was like imagine if it was Andreas who put Belos in charge. Wow. Like, that's just coming to my head. Good grief. Anyway, sorry, everybody. I'll try and move away from theory, so I'll try, you know, let's try and stay.
That's fine.
Right, okay, so
we have this moment where, King Andreas' father gives him the key, and then he, they decide to sneak in and open the door. And so when Leaf touches the Calamity Box, she receives this vision of like what's happening in the future. And it's all about like, you know, they're conquering the different worlds, and then planet Earth, and then there's this huge meteor that's crashing down. And then she tries to warn Aldrich. That's what his name is. Yeah.
Okay.
So she warns King Aldrich that we cannot use the Calamity Box because I see a dark moment that's going to be happening in the future. And then we have her being like walking away saying like, well, thank you for letting us know, we'll take it from here. And then he tells Andreas, it's like, you need to, you cannot just rely on your friends because now she's a traitor. And then we see the moment in which when he trusts his son to hold the key, but then we have, Leaf taking the key from Andreas, and she steals the box And then there was a moment in which Beryl was trying to stop her, but then, he got distracted. And so then Leaf disappears, and then Andreas kind of like banishes Beryl, saying, now you're just going to be in the front lines with the other Toads, which is where we got the introduction of how Toads became the warriors in Amphibia. And then we have, Andreas told by his dad, now that you're the ruler, you cannot trust on people. And so this is when he starts building the fact that, people cannot be trusted. And it's kind of like Lotso Hugging Bear from Toy Story 3, in which he personally feels that he was being betrayed, when in reality, he was, something else happened, and then he took it just way too far.
Yeah. So, it looks to me like, so that whole friendship just falls apart pretty much. Like, by the way, Leaf goes to the Olms and gives them the music box. But it's interesting to see, well, I mean, like, after that, like, I guess we're still yet to hear about how it actually ended up in the human realm.
Yeah, we don't know about that. Yeah, we know that the Olms were able to receive the Calamity Box, which is how the prophecy came to be. We know that part. But how did it end up on Earth? Where is Leaf? There's still so many questions that we don't know about.
Yeah, like, I mean, is Leaf still alive? Like,
I mean, it's been over 1,000 years. I doubt it.
Right,
but then again, in this show, I mean, King Andreas was able to live 1,000 years, so I have no idea.
No idea, but mind you, like, it'd be interesting to see if Leaf went to the Earth realm, and then she basically lived out her days basically being on Earth. And maybe that's the reason why all the stuff ended up in the pawn shop. Maybe she owned the pawn shop. Like,
yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, that's still a lot of questions. And then people were bringing up the fact that Leaf looks a lot like Sprig. The same color with the skin, the same color hair. A lot of people think that maybe that Sprig and Polly are like the descendants of Leaf.
Maybe. So, it's interesting, like, because, I mean, we don't know too much about their parents, I don't think. Like, we know that they got killed.
The parents died at, when Sprig and Polly were very young, so we don't know anything about them.
Exactly,
but we never brought them up.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, we don't even know, like, what they did and, like, what they were about and everything like that. So, like, it still leaves questions about, like, what their purpose is in the story. Pretty much, like, same thing with Luz's dad. Like, we don't exactly, we know that he's passed away, but we don't actually know what his exactly who he was and what he was about. I
mean, I think at some point that Leaf must have been into the human realm, because not only is the Calamity Box on Earth, but if you remember that in the episode in which when, Anne and the planters went over to the museum and Dr. Jan was showing them the clay pot, we see that Leaf had the Calamity Box and she was showing it to a bunch of Vikings. So I think that she was in the human realm at one point.
Yeah, so, like, it was interesting to see where... what became of her, I think, and basically where she is now.
I'm sure at some point we will get that revealed, but wow, I mean, this episode revealed so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was Amphibia, and so besides all the speculation of where we're going to go next, I think there's not really much else really to kind of discuss with the Owl House and Amphibia at this stage.
Yeah, next week's episode we have Newton Tights and Fight or Flight. So Newton Tights is about while on a recon mission, Anne and Sprig confront an old mentor, and then Fight or Flight, according to its plot synopsis, it says Anne tries to rescue an old friend from one of King Andreas's robot camps.
Okay, but until then, everybody, we will discuss those episodes next week, and so have a good week, everybody, and I hope you enjoy all the theories that we're enjoying right now. And yeah, take care, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.